So often we can reduce prayer to a task or a kind of a transaction that we make with God where we say, God, I've been pretty good, so give me this or do this for me, when prayer is supposed to be an expression of our love for God. Prayer is supposed to be the most natural part of a love relationship. You know, you just want to be in conversation. You just want to speak to the one that you love. And I got to ask you, is prayer about that for you? Are you just so in love with this God that you just can't help but talk to him all the time? You know, we designated the month of February as a time when we would kind of share with you the vision for the church for 2007. I know we're kind of a little late, you know, we should do it in January. But we designated February, saying we want to pray through some things, think through some things, and then share with you the vision for the church. But I want to be very extremely cautious when we talk about the vision for the church, because it's kind of expected nowadays in an American church for a pastor to come up and give you a vision or a plan for the year, and then maybe even come up and explain to you the 5-year plan for Cornerstone, and then the 10-year plan for Cornerstone of here's what we're going to do, here's what we want to achieve, so let's have a prayer meeting so that we can achieve these things. And I've been told many times that it's foolish not to have a 5 or 10-year plan. People have told me you're going to kill the church unless you have a 5 or 10-year plan. And they'll quote Proverbs 29:18, where it says, without vision, the people will perish. Right? So you got to have vision. You got to have a plan. You got to. But I want to take you to that verse, because you guys, that is one of the most misquoted verses in the world. Turn to Proverbs 29:18, and let's see what it really says. Proverbs 29:18. Because we've all heard that verse, right? If you've been in church for years, you've heard that verse. Without vision, the people will perish. So, Pastor, you better come up with a vision for the church. Otherwise, they're just going to die. Right? You got to have vision. You got to have plans. You got to focus on what's ahead. Proverbs 29:18. I know, you're going, what? That can't be the verse. That is the verse. Someone read it for me. That's the verse. Where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law. What's he talking about? He's talking about where he's contrasting people who cast off restraint, people who don't listen to the law, people who practice lawlessness, with the people who actually get the revelation or get the revelation from God. He says, blessed is he who keeps the law. What is that passage talking about? What is the vision that he's talking about? He's talking about the vision or the revelation of God's word, God's commands. He says, if there's not someone presenting to you God's commands or God's revelation, you're just going to live however you want to live. You're going to disobey his laws. But where there is revelation, then people are blessed because they keep the law of God. Now, the King James Version says, where there is no vision, the people perish. But then it continues by saying, but blessed is he who keeps the law. Explaining again that if you read that verse in context, it's really not talking about vision the way we picture vision nowadays of, this 5-year plan of what we're going to do and all of these goals. Vision is referring to a vision from God or a revelation from God that leads you to obedience. And obedience of his law, and where that's not taught, that people are just going to cast off restraint, they're just going to do whatever they want, and they're not going to be blessed for it. Okay, so understand that this whole idea of we need to have this vision for the future, I don't believe is a biblical one. See, I'm just not convinced that pursuing a vision is the most biblical way to do church. What do they do in the book of Acts? Remember in the book of Acts, after Jesus ascended back into heaven, they all went into the upper room, right? The disciples got in the upper room. Remember what they did? They had a planning meeting. And they strategized, right? They got together, they got all the brilliant minds together and go, man, if we did this, 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 and this, I bet you the church would grow. And then Peter, came out on the day of Pentecost and gave his 10-year plan. No, that's not what happened. What did they do? They just sat in that upper room and they waited and they prayed. It says they were constantly in prayer. They prayed, they prayed, they prayed. They had no idea what was going to happen. They just prayed because God told them to. And so for 10 days straight, they just prayed and prayed and prayed. And then we all know what happened after that. Then we know what happens in Acts chapter 2. It's like suddenly the church just came alive. The church was birthed. But it was with all these unexpected things. Nothing that the disciples could have planned for or prepared for. They had no clue what was going to happen. I mean, that's when all the disciples, all of a sudden, they walk outside. God's Spirit just falls upon them. They all start speaking different languages. One guy's open his mouth and goes, "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" It's like, whoa, what's going on? Another guy going, it's just suddenly they're all taught, and then there's these foreigners from all these other countries going, man, I understand that guy. There's a Jewish guy speaking my language, and all these people start following Jesus because they're going, what in the world is going on here? And then thousands of people in one day, 3,000 people just go down and say, man, I want some of that. I need to get baptized. It was a result of prayer. They prayed and crazy things happened, and I so want to do church that way. See, I believe, and maybe this is just my arrogance, I believe I could come up with a business plan that would cause some increase in the church, cause some growth to take place, cause us to prosper somewhat, and come up with a pretty good plan. Same way as if I were to open a restaurant or if I, start a clothing line or whatever else. I'd come up with some sort of business plan that I think would probably work, and I could probably apply it to the church, and we'd probably see some growth and say, oh, Cornerstone's a good, healthy church. But honestly, don't you come to church to get away from that? I mean, honestly, don't you come here to say, I don't want to see a plan that makes sense? You know what I mean? I'd love to just come and experience something supernatural. I mean, isn't that why you're here? Isn't it because you're bored of things that make sense and the natural order of things, and you go, I want to see the supernatural. I want God to just come into my life and just turn everything around. I want things to happen that no one can explain. I want to be part of a movement that is just clearly of God. See, that's what I want to be a part of. And it doesn't happen through, just getting the most brilliant minds together and coming up with a plan. It happens through prayer. It happens through a ton of prayer where we just come before God and say, God, look, I don't know what's best for this church. All I know is I want to see you. I want to experience you. I want, we're saying I'm hungry for more of you. I've seen what I can do. I know how I can manipulate things and make certain things happen here or there. But that's not what I want in life. I want to experience you. And you guys, clearly that's through prayer.